gentlemen, and welcome back to A State Aloud. This is your host, Chris Jefferson, and here we have a very special episode, a man I'm very proud to bring to you guys and my audience abroad. We have Ron Bautista, ladies and gentlemen. So if you guys don't know who he is, community activist, community leader, you've run for several positions in local government, and you're currently running for one right now. On top of that, you have an amazing story of how you've come here to being such a predominant leader in Hoboken. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Ron Bautista. So.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me here. I'm really excited to be here. You know, I was just talking to my wife about defining your identity. And what I am is a public servant. Without even being an elected official, that's just my motto, my way of operating.
Okay.
Because I'm not a politician, you know.
No, you don't seem like it at all.
No, I'm not a politician. I'm more focused on serving the public, no matter where I am at. Even on my professional job, that's my focus. So that's who I am. I'm running for county commissioner.
Yes, sir.
And the election is next June. But I'm starting early because that's the way we build the process, talking to neighbors, literally calling them right now, having those conversations, reaching out to people who I already know in my network based on my past runs. So just excited to have this conversation with you.
Absolutely, man. I'm happy to have you on because it's interesting. Even our first conversation, about government and local politics and the process. And the one thing we really clicked on was, like you said, doing the work before you even have the position.
Yeah.
And that's what you're currently doing now. And like you said, you're campaigning almost a year out, so to speak. So your campaign is literally what they would call grassroots.
Yeah.
Like you're starting from the bottom, you're getting a lot of local donations. Like how... Being who you are, a man of the community, as you've already been, how does that even differ from what you already do?
Well, it differs because, well, one, I had to get back in the mode of campaigning, too. My last campaign was 2020. For the record, I had only been a U.S. citizen for 4 years.
Yes, sir.
And I got 40% of the vote in that election. This is a rematch, basically.
Okay.
But I had to get back into that game, into that mindset, being able to talk to people over the phone, just like that. It's not something that just comes natural to people. So, I had to go through coaching again. I had to get a call time manager, get them to help me out to get back in my groove. So it's that preparation mentally.
Yeah.
You have a lot of, doubts as a human being, like, why me? Why should I run? It's like, it's like all those things, that imposter syndrome that comes up.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of those things that happen on a regular basis to everyday people when you get a new position, when you're applying for a job. That's basically what I'm doing. I'm applying for a job, but I'm looking for the validation and for the vote and the support from a ton of people, thousands of people.
Yeah.
It starts with my own immediate network by getting donations, individual donations. It starts as a grassroots because that's the way I want to approach politics. I want to make sure that I'm running to represent everyday people, not the politicians, not their interests. And that starts with the money. That starts with, where do my votes depend on? Do they depend on my values? Do they depend on the policies that I stand for? Do they depend on the way that I'm doing politics? Or do they depend on a political party boss that's telling me what to do and how to vote and what to do and how to move? And do I drink in a podcast or not, right? Do I go out just like a regular person and just meet with other people and have fun with friends? So all of those is things that dictate the way I do politics. And my shift really is, one thing is having that presence in the community, doing the community work. At the end of the day, the politicians have the vote and the seat at the table. And that's what we're fighting for, is for us to have a seat at the table. Because right now, politicians, even if they know, some of them, many of them, even if they know the right thing to do, they won't do it unless the political party boss gives the blessing.
And that's big. And now I'm just gonna keep diving into questions, like you said. And you made a big point of a lot of people in the positions of power are hesitant to make certain moves, and like you said, unless that big boss is doing it. Now, one of the big things that reasons for that is the money piece, right?
Yeah.
Like the average person doesn't realize how much money it costs to run for office, to do everything from your flyers, your T-shirts, your banners. I mean, God bless you if you can get TV time or radio time, and even if you have connections in those places, can take a lot of resources compared to anything else. How do you feel you having a campaign based on the average voter? How is that going to allow you a lot more freedom than, say, someone that's just kind of riding a ticket online with someone else?
People smell bullshit.
Yeah.
So when I literally, like, my first campaign, I'm talking to an 18-year-old just that is graduating high school, Latino, and he looks at me. I'm making my pitch. I'm telling him about the campaign. He doesn't care. As soon as I told him, so like I'm campaigning after my job. I have a 9-to-5 job, and I'm campaigning also during the weekends. He's like, wait. So you're like a regular dude? And I was like, yeah. It's like, so you're not doing this just because just because you want the power. Like, you actually care about things.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, like, and that's when it clicked for him. That's something similar that I see that happens with people. It's like, wait, like, that's exactly the reason why we have elections that have 8% of the turnout.
Yeah.
Because people smell the bullshit. They're like, why do I have to vote if that person doesn't really is not real?
Yeah.
And you have to have that level of realness, and you can't achieve that if everything you're doing is just rehearsed and just by the book and just you have to practice. You have to know what you're gonna say and what's been working, and work your craft and messaging and how you're approaching things and how you're saying it and what you're saying, but you're not stiff.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's, you cannot, you at the end of the day, you are stiff if you depend on a party boss that's giving you the script of like, you cannot move out of this frame.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to stay in this lane. And by the way, today is my 6-year anniversary as a U.S. citizen.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Jeez, now we got to celebrate some more, man.
Celebrating today. Yeah. So, it comes to me sometimes. Politicians, they come up to me and say, you shouldn't have said this. You shouldn't have done this petition. You should have come to me for permission kind of attitude.
Wow.
And they don't know this, but that takes me off. That really takes me off, especially because I was undocumented for 11 years. Those were 11 years that I had to stay quiet.
Yeah.
Not being able to speak up, feeling like, in fear, not feeling like you have rights to even defend yourself or your family. So when somebody says that to me, especially as a U.S. citizen, that to me is offensive.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's something I don't take, and why many of the politicians don't like me.
Absolutely, man. And I can imagine that because, like you said, when we as people want to be free, it's more relaxing to just be yourself. There's no tension, there's no anxiety with it. And like you said, when you do have a script that you have to align with or a party you have to align with, you're really having a sense of losing yourself. Now, that always rises the question with me with expectations of politicians. Do we, with any person of power, any position of power, you're gonna have some expectations. You want them to know what they're doing. Do you think we put an unrealistic level of expectation on politicians when it comes to getting things right versus the leniency we may have on ourselves in everyday life?
I think a lot of politicians put themselves in that box. So that, because a lot of it is framing, the way, the type of tie you wear. My third debate when I ran for mayor of Hoboken in 2017, none of the debates I wore a tie, but that third debate was actually at Stevens Institute of Technology.
Nice.
And one interesting tweet I saw after the debate was somebody was like, wow, the only candidate that wasn't wearing a tie out of 6 candidates was Ron Bautista.
Wow, okay.
And I was like, I didn't play it out. I was just like, that was me.
Is what you felt at that time.
Is what I felt at that time. I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to wear a tie. I wore a suit because I like suits. I like my button-ups. I like my white button-ups.
Yeah.
And I went like that, but I went as my real self. And I feel like everybody has to build their own brand and project it and own it and have that consistency. If I'm being consistent with somebody and I'm like, listen, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to figure out who does.
Yeah.
And somebody had approached me, was like, hey, why don't you like study transportation policy, urban planning or something? I was like, because there's a lot of urban planners and engineers that know their shit, but there's not a lot of politicians and public servants that will actually follow through in those issues, because they're thinking more about their popularity rather than what's right and how do I work with the public to make it popular, to make it right.
Yeah, and that's pretty interesting, right? Because they're worried about their popularity over doing what's right. And hilariously enough, if you do what's right by people, you're going to be popular.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to be the key. And we've seen it with most of the elections we have, both local and on the grander scale, all the way to the presidency. It does become more popularity. What zingers have they said that you like? Have they dressed a way that you can appreciate? Do they, what's the word I'm looking for? Present the essence of the position that we come to expect? But they really don't ask the question is, are you willing to listen to the experts? Are you willing to look at all the information before making a decision? And like you said, living that brand, where their brand is more or less just kind of a cookie cutter box. And with brand coming up, like, what do you feel, what would you say is your brand? Not just for running, but what's the Ron Bautista brand?
An everyday person that wants to serve the public, you know. And there's a close connection between the personal brand and what your personal mantra is. Instead of going, what am I projecting as a brand, I'm thinking more about what's my mantra, what's my purpose, my mission, what's my North Star. And I think I mentioned to you like what that was. It's really that solidarity is not charity. That when we look out for one another, we can all grow.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to me about ideology, it really comes down to that.
Yeah.
And, you know, because there's a lot of gray areas in ideology, and there's a lot of gray areas in the way people think and feel and vote.
Yeah.
So when you simplify it into like, because some people might be like, hey, you know, some people don't care about homeless people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know, at some point it affects you. That there's a homeless person on the street. Maybe it's not for that person. Maybe it's not, you know, the fact that, you know, there's somebody that's living outside and just suffering. Maybe maybe for that person, it's like, hey, that it's ruining the environment around their community.
Yeah.
But maybe that's the way that you're like, hey, see, it does impact you.
Yeah.
If you don't look out for one another, that's what happens. If you don't look out for one another, if there's no affordability, guess what? It comes out and bites you too.
Yeah,
Even if you're a young professional and you're making 120K, 130K a year, rents are still like, I've known people in Hoboken and in Jersey City, they're like, man, my rent just is going up like $1,000 a month.
Oh yeah, it's insane.
And I'm like,
Jersey's not one of the top. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, oh shit, like, you know, you are a young professional, you're making good money, you did everything right, and they're just able to raise your rent like that. There's some issue, and that's not just, hey, let's leave it to the market, because when it comes to livelihoods, you can negotiate. You need some things that the government has to do for you.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point where of really looking to see the smaller things in your neighborhood that can affect you, whether it be the homeless person. I know we talked about school and how even if you don't have kids, studies show that a well-educated environment and well-educated youth yields a better and safer community.
Yeah.
So it can yield longer down the road. And you make that point of having the government step in to give some regulation to things like the housing market. And then, I mean, sure, if you guys have tuned in lately, you see that Jersey City was voted the highest rent average in the country with something like $4,400. And when we asked some of the local politicians about it, they go, oh, well, if you leave downtown and the waterfront and you go to the south side, you can find something that's affordable. But it's more or less like, is that what we have to do nowadays? Because especially with Hoboken. Hoboken's 1 square mile. There's really not a lot of leaving an area in Hoboken. And I mean, I don't want to get into direct policy because, like you said, I really love the fact that you're willing to listen to the experts in it. But it's like, what would you say to the people that are weary of the government stepping in on such things, saying it may eliminate the competitiveness of the market?
No, and I think that there should be market rate properties.
Yeah.
But I do also feel that believe that there have to be some regulations into how much you can increase it, because, like, yeah, you can just take off and move to another state. That's not realistic.
It's not.
It's not realistic even for, like, listen, I have a mother that she's a senior citizen,
Yeah.
but, you know, she became a U.S. citizen late in her life. She cannot live off her Social Security.
Oh, absolutely not.
And in her retirement, she still has to work.
Yeah.
We still have, me as a young professional, I still have to figure out how am I going to be able to help her still live in Hoboken, not just out of this is her apartment and she wants to live there. It's for the fact that this is where her community is, where her family is. This is where she has her independence. She can just literally walk out the door and start walking to wherever she wants.
Yeah.
She can go do groceries. She can hop on a shuttle, go to ShopRite, grab some food, and then come back. She can walk over to see me drop off my daughter. She can walk over. Right now, there's a live, music on the waterfront, Latino music, salsa.
Oh, yeah.
And she can enjoy it with her friends that are also older. Like, you can't just say, just move out. It's
Yeah.
all right. Just go to a cheaper place. That's why there's some things that are not left to the market. There are some protections, especially for most vulnerable people. And there's also some limitations that have to happen. That's why there is rent control. But also, that's why there should be policies like community land trust. And I am going to go into a little bit of policy.
Please do. Please. I love details.
But so community land trust is basically funding nonprofit housing. The same way that right now we're funding parks.
Okay.
Right now there's a trust fund at the county level, actually at the Jersey City level,
Yes.
and there's a one in Hoboken in the city level. There's a trust fund that a percentage of the budget goes to that trust fund that's used to either buy create parks or improve parks.
Yes.
So why not do the same thing that we're doing for parks? Why don't we do the same thing for homes?
Yeah.
For nonprofit homes. That's the only difference. We're not asking not have private property.
Yeah.
We're asking there's already private property. Really, practically, 98% of the property that is created in Hudson County is private property and it's market price. We need a little bit more nonprofit apartments too, and that's something that just as little as saying we're going to start investing the same amount that we're doing in parks, invested in housing that it can stay permanently affordable because it's nonprofit.
Yeah.
All right, and there are different forms. There's forms that are for rentals, and there's forms that you can do it as your first house, first apartment, and that way you're paying it, but you're really building that equity, that wealth for you, and then you can sell it, but only like a little bit more percentage of gains. But at least you have a capital to then, if you want to buy another property somewhere else,
Absolutely.
you can. And then you leave it affordable for the next person around. That's
Exactly.
something that doesn't happen in Hudson County. That's something that we need more of. That's something that already has happened in other parts of the country, like Burlington, Vermont. Bernie Sanders did that. And they have about 4,000 affordable units that help people, and they stays affordable for the next person around. Build that wealth and that equity. So that everybody can benefit from it, and not just the politically connected.
Absolutely, man. And I'm glad you made that point where you say it has been done, because a lot of we live in a if you can't show Pixar didn't happen, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's important, especially in Hudson County, because with Jersey City, they had a program similar with the 955 rule, but most people didn't read the contract, where they help you get affordable housing, so you could build equity, and you're paying your mortgage. But if you sell for a profit, 95% of your profit goes back to the city, and the property gets sold. So you only leave with 5% of the equity that you put into the home. So it's almost as if you're just renting. You're just a landholder at that point.
And then it doesn't stay affordable for the next person.
Exactly.
Around.
It now goes to market value for the city.
And that's when the city now is in business instead of serving the people, which is exactly the opposite that we should be doing in terms of the government. The government shouldn't be run as a business, because it's similar to nonprofit work.
Yeah.
It's not about making the money. It's about, yes, some self-sustainability, but also it's about, with the main focus is social empowerment, helping people build themselves up.
Yeah.
You cannot do it for people, but you can provide the tools and the engineering around so that people have the better means to, in order to walk through that path of growth. And some will do it a lot faster than others, but it's about building it up. That's, you measure improvement. You don't measure like everybody's doing great right away.
Yeah.
Right? As long as we're moving forward and we're building, helping people build themselves up, and we're building a better environment and better community, then we're succeeding.
Yeah, seriously, man. I mean, and that's a huge point, and then housing is a huge point in that, right? And with that being said, just like you said, building everyone up, giving people an opportunity to just grow in every aspect of life. Other than housing, what are some areas you really think that not just Hudson County, but even Hoboken in particular, what are some of the things you would like to see changed, or things being presented to the citizens to really help people be lifted a little bit
Yeah,
more?
and I talked to you about this. Like, we have to own the narrative around change. You know, I was raised in Hoboken.
Yeah.
Like, there was literally somebody, and talk about popularity. You know, when I was talking pedestrian safety
Yeah.
and bicyclist safety, like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
There's this one guy that came up to me. I went to shake his hand, and he said, "No, because you know," he was starting pointing his finger at me.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Dude, I know you. You live on this street. You know my uncle." And he just froze, and he was like, "Wait, you're from here?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, I grew up here, and I know about you, and like, this is why I'm doing things." So sometimes people think that you're coming in and you want to change things of something that you don't know. When people start talking to me like, "You don't know, traffic is so bad, it's never been this bad," I'm like, "Listen, I've been in Hoboken 23 years. It was bad 23 years ago.
Yeah.
I lived on Monroe Street,
Yeah, man.
right on the exit of Hoboken. Don't
Yeah.
tell me it's never been bad. It's always
Yeah.
been bad. It can only get worse when we don't provide alternatives for people who don't need to drive, because then you take an Uber, you take your own car, and you don't need that many drivers in order to make a traffic jam.
Yeah.
I've literally counted when I'm biking down on Monroe Street. I'm counting, and I'm like, it only takes 20 cars, which usually it's about one driver per car. That's the average, 1.2. That in order to make one block already full of cars waiting at a light and already making a traffic jam
Yeah.
at that light. So, you know, if we just increase by 1% of people in Hoboken to drive, we're screwed.
Oh yeah.
And so it's about thinking about those alternatives. And, you know, really, that's one of the policies that we can improve is, one is people's safety. So making it safe for everyone
Yeah.
to be able to just walk down the street, cross the street, be able to move around. Just like I told you about my mom, she just
Yeah.
walks out her door and she can be active.
Absolutely.
Because she can't drive. She's like, I don't want to drive. She doesn't. Like, and also it's liberating for some people not to have to own a car.
Oh yeah.
Because they don't have to look for parking. So it's like, yes, if that's something that you need, go for it. It's not about taking your car away. It's about making sure that you have the space and you're not fighting over somebody else over a parking spot.
Yeah.
Right? And it's about making it safe for everyone, because if it's safe for the pedestrian, it's going to be safer for the cyclist. It's going to be safer for the driver. And that's something that the county commissioner seat does have involvement in. The most dangerous roads in Hudson County are run by the county government. One of them is JFK Boulevard right here.
Oh yeah. Huh. Oh yeah. I drive down it every day.
It's a death trap.
Yeah.
You know, and Patterson Plank Road, there was an 80-year-old woman. She was an artist from Hoboken. She would bike all the time to her shop in Union City, and she got hit by a truck. We went to that intersection after she passed away.
Jeez.
We had a ghost bike there in memory of her, and I was crossing the street and I got chills because I was like, "There's a park in that intersection." And I'm walking as a 30-something-year-old person, because I think it was like 2 years ago, so maybe a 34-year-old person, and I'm scared of crossing the street with traffic lights.
Yeah.
Imagine an 80-year-old woman going on a bike, trying to
Absolutely.
go through that. So it's about really, again, putting yourself in the shoes of others. understanding that there's a lot of trauma out there.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because of this, there's a lot of suffering because these things have gone unattended. I literally went to the county commissioner that's currently there, Anthony Romano. I'm not afraid to say his name. And I told him, like, can we do an improvement here? And he said, yeah, we should start looking into not allowing people to bike there. And I was
Wow.
like,
So he wants to remove a freedom.
not only remove our freedom, but you're blaming the
actual-
80-year-old woman who got run over and killed.
That's
and I'm not afraid to say it because that has been his motto, and that's the issue with that politician type that's just looking out for their own agenda and themselves and their position and who it depends on, instead of really caring is like, what are the engineers got that we can do?
And that's so vital, right? Because Hudson County has the funds to do a lot of things. You're saying, especially bikes. I know bike lanes were huge in Jersey City because I know the last mayoral campaign, one of the arguments a lot of people said to us was that the bike lanes don't lead us anywhere. They're not connected. You'll get to a major intersection, they're gone, and you kind of you start fighting with the traffic.
Yeah.
Very similar to what that 80-year-old woman probably had to go through. And it's not that we don't have the means. It's always the intent.
Yeah.
Like we can
the decision.
We can give someone power, we can give them money, we can give them the people and the resources, but if you don't have the intent of solving the problem, you're going to get nowhere.
If we don't have public servants that have the political courage to do what's right, then what the heck are they doing there?
That is true. That is such a large hole that I and a question I've always wondered is, when did politicians forget that they're public servants? Because we like when we talk about, like you said, I'm not a politician. Most people out there look at that as a saying of like, well, I'm not going to wear suits. But really, a politician is more than just a persona. It's a way of life. When you're a professional politician, you're spending a lot of your time fundraising to get the monies for the campaign, to get into the power. And if you're fundraising for certain people, just like we all know out there, if someone asks you for money, you're going to either want it back or you're going to favor. The world works in a bartering system in that way, and whether we like it or not. And it's kind of like, at what point did we forget as like that they work for us, so to speak?
And you just said about bargaining system, right? But it depends on what are you giving in order to get that donation or get that vote. And it depends who you ask and how you set up the conversation.
That is true.
So I've never worked well, and I'm happy I don't. And that's not my way of operating, of like, all right, I'm going to talk to this business person and I'm going to ask them for max out because I'm going to help them out with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
One, it doesn't feel right to me.
Absolutely.
And if I'm gonna be feeling shitty, might as well not do it at all.
Exactly.
So it's like I'm gonna do it right. Like I said it when I made my announcement. I was like, I've always been a Frank Sinatra fan. Frank Sinatra was born in Hoboken, and he had this great song called "My Way."
Yeah.
And that's the way I'm running. That's the way I'm running my life. Is I'm doing things my way.
Yeah.
Some people are uncomfortable, but really you got to be comfortable with yourself and the way you approach things.
Amen to that.
And so politicians really forgot the public servant piece when they got the rules laid out and said, this is the only way you can win. I'm running to show not really the politicians, to show other people, like, you don't have to run that way.
Yeah.
Some people would tell me, it's like, no, you just have to call your network of people and ask them for $2,000 each. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of network.
Yeah.
But you know what I got? I believe I have 1,000 friends that can help me with $100.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to start, I have been starting to ask those questions. And some of them are like, listen, I don't have $100. I have 50. I have 30.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you can provide, that will help. And that helps you validate your point. And my bargaining is not, I'm going to get you a job. Mine is, and literally what I'm saying is like, I'm going to fight for everyday people just like you.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not going to be beholden to politicians.
Yeah.
So that way I want government, and I want to show people, like, when you run this way, you can serve people, serve the public, instead of being the typical politician, that then you're gonna not feel like you do. And it's a big challenge to get people of color, Latinos, to run for office.
Yeah.
And this, I came up with a conversation with another person that's thinking of running for office, just like last week, and I told him, it's tough because we have such a challenge professionally,
Yes.
to excel, and we have this responsibility, generational responsibility, to make it.
Yeah.
That we're like, nah, I'm gonna focus on my job.
Yeah.
I'm gonna focus on that pay, on that role, on that position, and I'm passionate about politics, but I need to focus on the job.
Yeah, provide for your family, put food on the table, pay that increasing rent.
Yeah, and that's why then people are like you and me, usually are like, I can't get into politics because I got to pay the bills.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's where that goes back to the importance of, like you said, being able to build generational wealth, being able, because that's something where if you do have that type of support, getting involved is gonna be a lot easier. You have something. You don't have to worry about your well-being because hey, this is taken care of. I'll be okay. Whereas if you don't have that, like you don't have the means, you don't have the time, because like you said, you're working 9 to 5. You're doing this every night, going out on the weekend, shaking hands. I see on Instagram, like this guy, he's at movie night with his family. Then the next day he's over here. I'm like, I'm going to sleep for you, man. Like, geez. So it's definitely crazy, man. But I appreciate your perspective in being aware of the challenges in which you face and any other person can face that's not kind of just born into this system. And it leads me to the question, like, I'm really interested in how you came, how those thoughts came to be. Like, how did you get into just public service? How did the person you are today, where did it all start?
It started with the reason why I had to come to the U.S.
Okay.
Is nobody leaves their home and their lives and their family and friends just out of nowhere. You do it many times out of necessity.
Yeah.
And so in 1999, Ecuador went through a crash very similar to the one we had in the U.S. Only worse because we didn't have the money to
bail people out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the banks collapsed. The money was worth nothing. So all your savings, poof,
gone,
are not worth anything.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that. People were going to the ATMs and they're like, yeah, it's not worth anything. It doesn't matter.
So they had a bank holiday. That means that banks are closed.
Yeah.
You cannot get your money. Because we're trying to get our shit together.
Yeah.
And then they didn't. And then that's where we ended up having to switch our currency to the US dollar back in Ecuador to really fixate things so we cannot maneuver the currency. But really what it comes down to is that it was corruption. It was the politicians doing business with business people.
Yeah.
And, just giving them the preference and giving them the benefits and people stealing money. So what I realized from the beginning, because my dad would always talk to politics about it. That's what it was on the news. Back in Ecuador, he would watch 3 different news outlets, like from 6 to 9.
Yeah.
And I would ask him, I'm like, why are you listening to so many? It's like, because each one has a different perspective on how to tell the news. So I was like, So that's why I do it. My wife is like, why are you listening? I'm like, it's something with my dad. Like I used to do that.
But that's such an important. If you zoom out a little bit on that and just the behavior in which he embodied, which was his opinion and the information he sought was not solely based on what he knew now. He was willing to listen to multiple parties to draw his own conclusion.
Yeah.
And that takes an extremely large amount of self-awareness to be able to say, like, hey, I don't have the answers. I'm relying on you to provide it. And if the 3 of you aren't agreeing, then I'm going to listen all 3 and then make my own conclusion. And I mean, for lack of better words, that's like a perfect way to be, especially when you're in politics, so to speak.
Yeah. And that's, so he was the one that got me started into politics. He was not a politician.
Yeah.
He was an entrepreneur. Okay. And he always thought and that's basically what happened, was because I saw the way politics affected us negatively and why we had to migrate and leave Ecuador to come to the U.S., being undocumented, see how that impacted me and my family.
Oh, yeah.
Then I was like, well, I have 2 choices. I either get frustrated with politics and say, F this, or take bull by the horns and be like, I'm gonna get into politics to change the way politics are done.
Absolutely.
And so I'm just following that path. That's where the passion comes from, because of I know that just as politics and politicians did negative things to people, there's the power to do positive things as a public servant. And so I did ask my dad when I was going to graduate high school. I was like, I don't know what I want to do. I like politics, but I also like business.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to go to school for. I went to Hudson County Community College, and he said, well, go for accounting, because no matter what, a good politician has to be a good manager and has to know their finances.
Yeah.
So, and you need the same thing for business. So start with that, and then you'll figure it out. Best advice you could do.
Seriously.
I did not want to be an accountant.
Yeah.
But I learned the basics, so I can put together a budget right now in marketing, where I ended up doing. And then for my master's, I was like, you know what, I'm just going to work on the politics. I'm going to lean into that. So I did, at the George Washington University, I did master's in political communications and governance.
Okay.
So really harness my craft, and really, that's what got me into politics. It was life experience, it was trauma, and it was family. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it sounds like you've had a lot of great influence and guidance, just hearing the things you're saying about your dad, the powerful implications of the behaviors in which he embodied on you. Like, even though you may not want to be an accountant, the things in which you're going to learn can carry a lot further. I mean, that to me is some of the best advice I've heard, and I think a lot of people here can even say they would hear, of just seeing the benefit, even if it's not aligned with what you want at the moment. And with that being said, like, it seems like your dad had a major influence in where you are now. Who else would you say has played a major role in your just getting involved and the mindset you have today going into politics?
My mom did too.
Okay.
In a softer way.
Okay. All right.
She's very religious, very spiritual. We go to church into one of the two Catholic churches in Hoboken that gives mass in Spanish.
Oh wow.
So,
okay.
But really, church was our community connection for many years, and they're the ones that when my dad passed away, they embraced us, and they saw like it was a ritual for us to go to church, and at a young age there would be something that had to happen at church, and they needed help, and my mom was the one that would put me, be like, go help.
Yeah.
And so it's that, sometimes you think of politics and service and just like, I'm doing this thing.
Yeah.
But sometimes service is just, bringing up your sleeves and then going and doing the work with the community, just being able to help, talk to people, socializing at the local level. She really brought that out in me. Like, sometimes it's just about the ritual of connecting with people on another level. So she's been a big influence for me. Another one were my high school teachers. I had a high school teacher. Big shout out to her. She was my social studies teacher, but she was also one of the leads for the debate team.
Okay.
So she got me in the debate team my senior year. My senior year was really when I got comfortable getting out of my shell and being more active. Late bloomer. It was like, all right, senior year, that's when I'm actually...
Let's get it going. Okay.
I'm going to start getting involved in everything. Before, I was a little bit more shy, more like just filling it out, but I was more in my own circles. So senior year, I was able to just come out and engage with people. So she was like, there's all these scholarships you can apply for. And then I told her, I was like, I'm going to be honest, I'm undocumented. And then I couldn't apply to any of the scholarships. I could have gone to Stevens for free.
That would have been... I probably would have known you. We would have been there at the same time.
Probably would have known you. And I couldn't, because she was very frustrated. I couldn't because I wasn't undocumented.
That's wild.
And so she was so frustrated, she did a pop quiz in my social studies class. And the pop quiz was the citizenship test.
Jeez.
And
Yeah.
I remember clearly I got an
Wild.
85
Yeah.
in that test, the
Yeah.
citizenship test.
Yeah.
As an undocumented immigrant.
Yeah.
Almost the whole class failed.
Yeah.
And she said, be thankful you're born with that right.
Wow.
Being a citizen. Other people have to earn it.
That's so powerful.
And that got me. I was like, ooh.
That's so powerful. Like, and I think most people in America do take that for granted. Being born here, being here in this country, we don't realize that no matter what you believe in life, like, it's the luck of the draw, right? This is the life that in which you were given, and the place, and the parents, the location, and
The zip code.
how vast the zip code, even how vast this world is, and you're able to be right here, in this place, in this town, in this city, just in this area, working with people, and we will sometimes make decisions, and based on the lack of appreciation for what we have.
Yeah.
Right, when we see it, and people have made comments over the years, and if you don't like something, leave, and all these things, and it's really not the answer. Like, I remember my best friend Gary, one of the biggest lessons he taught me. Shout out to Gary. Hopefully you're tuning in. He always says, when something goes wrong, you don't leave. You work on a solution. And it's something I feel like we're kind of losing here. Locally, I definitely think I'm not saying everyone's like that, but I think like we're looking for the easy outs. But I think it's like just hearing your experience, and kind of like the opportunities that would have been afforded to you had you literally had a piece of paper. It looking at where we live, Hudson County, being so diverse it makes me think of like how many other young children may be missing out on an opportunity just because they don't have a piece of paper.
And a lot of it too is the lack of stories that guide people too.
Oh yeah.
Because I didn't realize there's a lot of there are people who have figured it out, even being undocumented. It's about, and I've met a few people who have started to shine light on those stories. And then I'm like, you could do that?
Yeah.
I'm like, man, imagine how much ahead I could have been. And that's also part of my mentality is I don't want you to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And that happens in politics, and that happens in government, that happens in communities and society. Some people are like, no, I suffered, so they should suffer.
Yeah, a lot of people, especially a lot of politicians go, I had to start out in the lower position, so
I made
you should
it.
start from here.
And I made it. Why can't you make it the same way?
You take your time and take 12 plus years to get to where I was, and in reality, it doesn't have to be that way. Like they say, a smart man learns from his mistakes, a wise man learns from the mistakes of others.
Yeah, and the way I operate is, I don't want you to start from scratch. I want you to start from where I'm at. So I usually tell progressive potential candidates, I'm like, I don't want you to start from zero. I want you to start from the 40% that I'm already at. I want you to, take what you need.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you who to be or what to think, but take my experience and roll with it. You're your own person at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But, learning from others and then applying it, that's all I did.
Yeah.
I took from I started with I was looking for experience while I was in college. It took me a little longer to finish my bachelor's degree because I was paying my own tuition.
Absolutely.
And I was going to NGCU, and I was like, all right, I need something to I love community, so my first connection with community is the Ecuadorian community. So I went and Googled a nonprofit. I found it. It's called Juve.
Okay.
And it's Ecuadorian youth. And they had done the first year of Ecuadorian scholarships for Ecuadorians, people from Ecuadorian heritage in the tri-state area. I go, I apply, I get involved. First month, big fight between the different members. Everybody left. It was 4 of us. And we're like, well, we got to run a scholarship program in 8 months, so let's get to work. And then I had to figure out, I'm like, well, how do I work? How do I go about this not happening again?
Yeah.
So I started doing my research, and I was like, what brings people together? And that's how I came up with the mantra, because I was doing my research, and there's this guy called Guy Kawasaki. I don't know if you heard of him. He's a brand evangelist, they called him. He worked with Apple and Steve Jobs. And something that he said was, don't make a mission statement, make a mantra. Because a mantra is 3 or 4 words that sum up what your purpose is. And then it's easy to remember for you, for your employees, for the consumer, in this case, for the community to know what you're all about.
Yeah.
And so I started with that. I'm like, all right, we have a 1-paragraph mission statement as an organization. I'm going to sum it up into a mantra.
Yeah.
And then everybody knew when they came in, this is what we're all about. We're about education and life and community. And you can come and build from that. Right? And then so that was like, all right, I got that one part done. And then the other one was, how do I make sure that we're able to collaborate? Because the dispute was like, somebody was like, but that's not in the bylaws.
Wow,
so you can't kick me out. And then that dispute happened. So then everybody left. So it's like, how do you build something that is not just according to laws, but according to values?
Yeah.
And so I saw this documentary called Bogota Change, and it's about these 2 mayors from Bogota in Colombia that changed that city for the better. And the first mayor that changed things was not the mayor that changed things physically, but changed the culture of a city based on one premise that was, one was consistency and just in terms of around honesty, right? But the other one was, and being actually an everyday person too. And the other one was positive peer pressure, meaning that just had this negative peer pressure to say, hey, grab a drink, smoke, do this, do all these bad things. It's about positive pressure of self-regulating each other based on what the norm is within this group. So you come into this group, in this case a nonprofit, and I was like, well, in this team, we respect each other, we're tolerant of each other, and we're here to collaborate and build based on the mantra. I'm not gonna kick you out, but each one of us is gonna make sure that everybody's following. Like if you've been disrespectful, somebody call them out.
Absolutely.
And that helps because you don't want to be the one that's like out of the 30 people that ended up being volunteers, being like, well, you're the rude one. And that's actually the same thing that happens in company culture. You don't, if you have a strong culture, then people are like, no, I don't want to be that. I want to be like a positive influence within the group. And that's what lifts in 3 years I was in the organization, we didn't have one fight.
So there you go. And that's, like you said, and like your key to that was not having the same think mentality, where we have a mantra, we have what we're trying to build on, but we're willing to go about it different ways. Because the end result is we want this positive effect. We want this to be at the end of the road. If you have an idea that'll work and it's better than mine, I'm okay doing yours. Like I don't need to be right. I want us to achieve the goal. And that I think that's huge between, like you said, companies, between government, both local and large political parties. And just everyday life. Most people, even in a household, don't put the laundry that way. Don't close the dishes. And you're like, look, we just want the laundry to go away and we just want the dishes clean. Why are we arguing about this? So, I mean, that's such an important life lesson to be able to implement that in a nonprofit space. I can tell you, I have a nonprofit. And for those watching, running a nonprofit is like running a corporation. Like it's not the relaxed environment of let's meet for dinner and talk about the community. I mean, a lot of organizations do that, but to really cause change, it's like running a company. And you're dealing with different personalities, different walks of life, different levels of expertise, different experiences, and having that same think mentality can be extremely detrimental when causing change, when growing, because eventually you're going to get to a point where there's a wall. And that's where the separation is going to come. And if you're not used to having those open dialogue where it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to accept that maybe doing something else is still okay, where being different and having change is what good, those moments of adversity are probably made you guys stronger.
And that's why it's important to have a strong backbone. Because the backbone is was going to keep you. There has to be some level of consistency.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean you don't change or you don't adapt to the situation. And so I think that's valuable, not just in nonprofit and community work, but also in politics. And politics gets a bad rep, and some people think is like, I don't want this to be political. Everything's political
Oh yeah.
because. And this is something that was like, oh, like, I don't want to make it political. Because just because you don't want to make it political doesn't mean the opposing side is not going to play politics.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So it's just about self-awareness, like you said, being like, okay, there's an awareness that there are power dynamics in play in everything we do, because everybody has the power to do something. Everybody has the power to vote, or has the power to make a donation, or has the power to run for office.
Yeah.
Has the power to vote in a city council meeting if they're an elected official. Somebody told me was like, oh, you gotta play this, be part of the system. I'm like, I am part of the system.
Yeah.
I play here. I'm involved too. Like, I could choose not to say anything, but I'm still part of the system.
Absolutely.
Or I can choose to speak up and leverage the tools that I do have on my hand, at my reach.
Yeah.
Right. Either mobilizing people, something as a petition, as something that some people are like, what is a petition? No, like, a petition can make government officials feel uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
And it can build that narrative to say, this is the change where we want to get to. And I'm getting people on board on that. Like, there are some things that I used to talk about 6 years ago that 6 years ago people were like, what the hell are you talking about? And then 3 years later is like, oh, we're doing this.
Yeah,
then.
it got changed, it got approved, it got moved, yeah.
It's because, that consistency of talking about it, learning how to explain it, because everybody has different lenses. Some people see it from a driver perspective. Some people see it from a pedestrian perspective. Some people see it from a government perspective. But at the end of the day, many times we want the same thing.
Absolutely.
It's just about how do I approach it based on your objectives, and then also letting you know, like, hey, like, look out for me too.
Yeah.
If I'm coming out for pedestrian safety, come out for affordability.
Absolutely.
Come out for me too. And
Absolutely.
And that lack of empathy and solidarity is what keeps us divided. We're fighting over crumbs.
Yes, we are.
Against each other, and the politicians are winning elections with 8% of the vote.
Absolutely. And that's the wildest part. And it brings back to the beginning where you said the smallest things in a community can have the biggest and grandest effects in our lives.
Yeah.
And it's so true, man. And we've been going deep in these conversations. I'm like just gonna check the time. I'm like, I need to get a drink, see where this is going. Oh, we're right on time, man. And I gotta ask some questions, because, like, being from Hoboken, we've been political.
Yeah.
And I usually will not make you pick a side on everything, but I'm a huge pizza fan. And I go into Stevens, spend a lot of time in Hoboken eating pizza. There's a lot of great places there. A lot of great pizza places in Hoboken. I gotta ask, what's your go-to?
That's a tough question, man. I like Rosario's. I have my moments. So I've done Rosario's. I've done 14th Street Pizza.
Yeah.
And for the Torna's is it's a staple.
Yeah, man.
Torna's I think it's still owned by my former soccer coach from high school.
Jeez.
He was actually also our Spanish and Italian teacher.
Okay.
He was Italian though. And Mr.
That's all,
Pergantino.
I really want to talk to that guy now.
Yeah, no, but
dope.
he was. Yeah, but funny thing was, like, when I for some reason they wanted to, going back to high school, for some reason they wanted to place me in a Spanish class. And I was like, I speak Spanish perfectly.
Easy A.
Like, but that was like,
Yeah,
no.
that's kind of crazy to make you. Yeah.
It was Spanish 1, and I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So
Yeah.
we got into an argument with my Spanish teacher, who was Italian.
Yeah.
And he was like, you're going to Italian class now. And I was like, fine, that's what I wanted anyway.
There you go.
And so, but anyway, so his family owned Torna's.
Okay.
It's just like 2 blocks away from Hoboken High School.
Yeah.
Small place, but we would always go after soccer games. We would go eat Torna's
absolutely,
there.
man.
Like,
Absolutely.
so there's a lot of that culture based on, like, how how I grew up, who I grew up with.
Yeah.
And it's funny when some people are like, "Oh my gosh, you saw Mr. Raps," and I'm like, "Yeah, we used to go there all the time."
Yeah, man.
So yeah, pizza places. I have a few, but those are the top for me.
Okay, makes sense, man. And it's interesting because like every place you mentioned is never they're not the big like top three that
No.
everyone talks about.
Oh, and Dozino's too. Dozino's
too.
was really
So
good.
you know like the good underground places that are
Yeah.
off of Washington, because it's
Yeah.
so interesting. Like because like I love pizza. I always go to food.
Benny Tudino's is because of the size.
Yeah,
to
like
me.
Benny's those are the size. Gio's just because of variety on 6th Street, and then Basil's they're right there.
Yeah.
Like I always hear those three, and to hear you mention so many others in Hoboken that I guess I don't even know if a lot of non-Hoboken residents may even know. It's refreshing,
Yeah.
and it makes me even more curious to go try them because
You should definitely try them. And that's the thing. I've probably eaten in all. I don't know if all the pizza places because there's a few new ones.
okay,
But majority of the pizza places I've had pizza. I used to have pizza like when I first came from Ecuador.
Okay.
I saw the pizza and I'm like, wow, slices are huge. And to me that was like a big differentiator for me.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, and then you have the sandwiches too.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, like that's one thing I love about like Hoboken food culture. As you can see, I was going to food most of my shows.
Yeah.
Is like you can still go there and get like a lot of old school things
Yeah.
that you can't get in a lot of places. Like
Yeah.
the Italian delis, the pizzerias, just so many diverse restaurants in the heart of Hoboken.
Yeah.
That you don't see on the social media tags all the time.
And I mean, something I miss is there was a big banner plaza that was in the corner actually where I mostly grew up at,
Okay.
4th and Jackson. That to me was one of the good spots because
Yeah.
it was a Dominican bodega,
Okay.
but they owned the place, they owned the
Yeah.
land.
Yeah.
And they had the bodega, the supermarket, and then right next to it, they had a kitchen. I don't call it a restaurant because you couldn't eat there.
Yeah, you could take it.
But you go, take it, and go,
Yeah.
and it was cheap, and it was good, and it was right there from where I live. So
Yeah.
it was just like that's something I miss. At the end of the day, like they had to. That one of the issues was there was a small fire in the kitchen. They had been working for 30 years already.
Oh, okay,
They were like
so-
done. They were like,
that's a sign.
and there was a developer that had been talking to them about like $8 million or something like that to sell it off. And they were like, fine, I'm just going to retire here.
So that was their sign to
Yeah.
get up, get moving, get out.
And I was like, I can't, I really wanted to just add, like, please hang on.
Yeah, a little
I
bit
just
longer.
love the food and just the convenience. And like, my mom would walk in and they would be like, Vecina, neighbor, how are
Yeah.
you? Like that's something that I don't want it to get lost.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the need for people to be able to grow old in Hoboken.
Absolutely,
and
man.
retire there and be able to stay there if they want to.
Absolutely, man. I'm excited for it. I love everything I'm hearing. I'm a big supporter.
Thank
I'm
you.
super happy to have you on the show.
Appreciate it.
One last question I ask all of my guests now. Being a state aloud, we're here to give voices to those who may not have it. Who's a person you think would be a great guest on the show?
4KJ.
4KJ. All right. So you
From
guys
For
heard
the
it.
Stress
From For the
podcast.
Stress. I'll be honest. I've heard his name a lot lately. I mean, I've met him a few times.
Yeah.
I hear a lot about his podcast and the stuff he's doing. So I mean, if you're saying 4KJ, then 4KJ, we're getting you on the show in the near future, man. So
I think so. Yeah, it's I believe that sometimes as podcasters,
Yeah.
people who do interviews, we want to get behind what's going on with them too, with you guys.
Oh yeah.
So I like that cross collaboration being
Yeah.
in each other's shows. I think that it's gonna be something beautiful to see.
Oh, I agree, man, and that's the biggest piece is being able to pick the brain of someone who's used to picking other people's brains.
Yeah.
Because now I'm like, you're a collective of a million conversations. Now, what rabbit hole can I go down?
The
What am
back
I
and
gonna learn
forth
about?
and that interview is gonna be insane.
Oh,
I
I'm
love
looking
it.
forward to it. Now,
I'm
see, now you're
excited.
getting me hyped up, and I didn't even talk to him.
That's what we do. That's what we do.
I love it, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Before we get out of here, please, you can look in that camera if you want. Let the people know where they can find you, how they can donate, and how they can support you.
Yeah, so you can find me. So I'm in marketing. You can Google me and you'll find me. But you can find me on all social medias with my handle Ron Bautista NJ. You can find my website ronbautistanj.com, and you can contribute by going to ronbautistanj.com/contribute. So looking forward to having a discussion. Running joke is that I have coffee with everybody.
Nice.
So
Yes.
if you want to grab a coffee, let me know. I'm always down, as you know.
Absolutely.
So reach out to me. I'm an open book.
All right, awesome. Thank Ron again. Thanks for coming on, my friend. It was a pleasure as always, man. And if you guys love what you heard, please check him out. We're gonna have all of his credentials and all of his social media in the bottom of the description. So you guys down there, go click it, go donate, go support. And if you like what you heard, go read some more and then go tell a friend. Especially if you're in the Hudson County and Hoboken area. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, this is Chris Jefferson here in the State Aloud. Thank you guys for tuning in, and as always, peace.